UFC 300 has a main event, guys. Alex Pereira will defend his light heavyweight title versus Jamahal Hill after weeks, months of speculation, rumors, predictions. I gotta admit, I did not see this one coming. And on paper, the fight is banging. I mean, who doesn't like themselves some Pereira versus Hill, right? But this is UFC 300. The expectations were high. Is this the main event that put the UFC over the top? Put UFC 300 over the top, I should say. Let's unpack it. Are you satisfied, guys? Yay or nay? Mike Bond, hit it.
Like, I don't want to be too harsh here. I know the UFC tried to explore a lot of avenues to find a main event for this card. They made a lot of calls, put a lot of money on the table to a lot of different people. And I think when this came in, I mean, the one thing that I guess was upside was like, it was a surprise. I don't think anyone really thought this fight was going to be on this card. Maybe they thought Alex Pereira would be on this card against someone else in Israel Adesanya or something like that. But we just didn't think Jamahal Hill was going to be healthy enough. I mean, this seems like a pretty outrageous turnaround for him after rupturing his Achilles in August. So for him to come in here, I mean, those were the biggest question marks. So we didn't really see that coming. And then you hear from these guys. We've both heard them do like small bits of media since this. Jamahal Hill said he didn't get the call for it until a day before it was announced on the night of UFC 298. And Alex Pereira said they basically were trying to get him to fight at UFC 301 on May 4th and decided to move this fight up to 300. So this was planned, I don't know, D, E, F. I don't even know where it falls down. They really had to scramble to make this. It's a good fight on paper, but this is one that you would just think would be kind of a normal pay-per-view headliner, right? The UFC 301 main event. It doesn't really feel like a mega fight, something out of the norm, extremely unique. This is the right next fight to make at light heavyweight. And in that sense, it's a good fight and a good main event. But yeah, on its own, it doesn't feel like a special UFC 300 headliner. But you look at the card as a whole, like I am satisfied. It's a great fight card. I mean, I think you have now like 12 current or former UFC champions fighting at UFC 300. So it's deep, it's good, but they just didn't get that big main event, something that's going to blow your socks off like Dana White was kind of teasing for a while there. In that sense, it's going to be a letdown. I think anything would have been a bit of a letdown. I mean, I know they really wanted Israel Adesanya and Dricus du Plessis. They put a ton of money out to both those guys. Israel Adesanya was ready from everything I heard, and it kind of fell apart on Dricus' side because he was still a little banged up. I think that would have been satisfactory as well, but yeah, we weren't getting Conor McGregor. We weren't getting John Jones. We weren't getting a George St. Pierre or Habib comeback or anything like that. So given who was available, what they could do, this was, I guess, best case. But yeah, this was a scramble, and it's just crazy to kind of think about because Dana White was first asked about UFC 300 like 14, 15 months ago. And the fact that it came this close down to the wire for them to figure out their main event is just kind of wild. But that's what happens when you're the UFC and you kind of live month to month off trying to build these cards and just throwing in whoever makes sense timing wise. So it is what it is now.
Mike, I know your socks weren't blown off, but is it more because it was like an option EDG, who knows what? Or is it more on the side of maybe Hill it feels like he's being rushed? And maybe we know when it looked like when they went to Jones, he said, no, I'm not ready. You know what I mean? Like you got to appreciate someone when they're not ready versus, I don't know, if it's taking the money or succumbing to the pressure and going before they may be ready. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, that's something I guess Jamal would have to answer where he is physically at this point. If you're him, right, like they said, the moment he relinquished the title, his next fight, he was going to get the pay-per-view points and he was going to be treated as a champion coming in. And even if he's got to push it a little bit for him to decline this opportunity to get a cut of the pay-per-view for UFC 300, who knows what like he thinks about the long-term stability of that leg and fighting off that Achilles. And if he's going in there being like, this is a big payday, I got to take this opportunity, then more power to him. I understand. I just hope he's not going in there a significantly lesser version of himself and rushing it too much, because how, unfortunate would it be if we get to this UFC 300 main event and it ends prematurely because he re-injures himself or something happens like that. And obviously, God forbid, he can't even make it to the fight and something pops up in camp. So this definitely felt like a risky scenario. It seems like everyone involved is kind of pushing it. The only person I'm not really surprised by being in the spot is Alex Pereira, because we know that dude will fight anyone, anywhere. And he's already saying he wants to make a 21-day turnaround and fight in Brazil at UFC 301 too. So we know this guy's a fighter, to his deepest core, and these type of opportunities shorter notice fights aren't a surprise to him. So his placement there, I'm not surprised in, but Jamahal Hill, I'm definitely a little concerned until he gives us some reassurance otherwise.
All right, Matt Wells, good to have you back after a few weeks. Let's hear your thoughts, man. Did it satisfy you when you heard it and we all felt like we got hit from left field? What was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I mean, to kind of break the fourth wall here, on the back end here at Junkie, like we try to prepare for these things, right? And I'll say this one was a curveball for us, but like if you were going to give me a slow reveal of the main event, right? Like if the announcement was a slow reveal, if you say UFC 300 main event, Alex Pereira versus, and then do the slow drum roll, you're sitting there say Izzy, say Izzy, say Izzy, say Izzy, Jamahal Hill, and then the Price is Right, loser sound plays. It's like
Dun, dun, dun.
it's a solid fight. Like Mike said, it's a great main event for any other pay-per-view. But for UFC 300, given the way that the promotion tried to sell it, the way Dana tried to sell it, like it's going to be this big blockbuster main event. It's going to, blow the doors off of everything. Didn't end up being that. I mean, it's a solid fight. Don't get me wrong. I think Jamahal Hill is going to bring, with the caveat, if he's healthy, if he's fully healthy, he's going to bring a hell of a fight for Alex Pereira. It's a fantastic fight on paper, but I don't think it's that big blockbuster fight that everybody was looking for. And unfortunately, that's going to sour some fans away, because the way Dana tried to sell this thing is that this is going to be like the biggest card ever in the history of the UFC. I don't think we've gotten that. But what we do have is a fantastic main event, a fantastic card top to bottom. It's probably going to be one of the best lineups that we see this entire year. But because of the way that they tried to sell it to us as it's going to be this big blockbuster thing, Conor, we didn't get Conor, we didn't get, any of these big superstars. Like it's going to sour some people away, unfortunately. But in reality, what we have is a fantastic card top to bottom. So we shouldn't really be complaining about anything. Like I said, it's going to be one of the best fight cards of the entire year. I do have a question about, why did they choose Alex on this card when you've got the Brazil event right afterwards? Like Mike mentioned, he said he's willing to turn around. So if he can go out there and spark Jamahal Hill, hey, maybe we'll see him main event that card too. But top to bottom, man, I think it's a fantastic card. Just not that big cherry on top that a lot of people were really expecting for a milestone event like UFC 300.
Matt, who's more wrong in the end? The UFC for hyping it up so much that we are left with this feeling, a little deflated, or the fans for holding the UFC to that and just not appreciating that it's a pretty solid card, and that main event, man, I just don't see how it's not going to deliver.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, it's a fantastic card, but I mean, you got to kind of place the blame on both, I think, right? For Dana for saying like we're going to give you this, like for teasing it for months and months and months, like it's going to be this huge fight, it's going to be this huge fight. What we end up getting is a fantastic fight. It's just not that big blockbuster type of fight, right? If it was Alex versus Izzy, I think that would fit that bill more, because Izzy's going up to light heavyweight. They have this incredible history between each other, wins and losses on both sides. That would fit that bill more. But now we kind of get like, oh, Jamahal Hill's coming back from injury. What is he going to look like? There's more questions there, I think, than more excitement for that matchup.
And Hill sparks fools, you know what I mean? So like, we got to give him his due. It's almost like we do appreciate that he's coming back. It'll be about 9 months, which if you follow other sports, that's about the right time. Usually 9 months to a year, somewhere in there. But this is also a different other sport. You're not like a DB trying to cover, some of these awesome wide receivers that run 4.3s. So I don't know. All right, Gus, how about you, man? What was your reaction? We're doing the watch along, and I remember a little bit of it. And now that it's kind of sat, for the last 36 hours, what are your thoughts?
Well, to kind of answer the question that you posed to Matt, George, I'm gonna put it to you this way. If I promised you steak and you sat there waiting for a steak all day, and I showed up with a really good hamburger, you're gonna have a smile on your face, but it ain't gonna be that same feeling, right? That you were expecting that steak. That's kind of what happened here. Look, this is a great fight. There's no doubt about that. All right. Was it what we were expecting? No. I was one of those few people that kind of said, just leave it as it is. Like, it's not that they didn't try. You have to applaud the UFC. They did everything they could possibly do to make the fans happy, to make everyone happy. It just didn't work out. So now you get stuck in this position where You can still deliver things, but at that point, are we maybe weakening future cards? Like what are we going to say? We're all going to have a great night, UFC 300. But what are we going to do when 301 comes around, 302? I say spread the love, man. I think at that point, just look, the chips weren't there. You kind of move on. What scares me moving forward here with this matchup, I still think it's going to be a good matchup, but at the end of the day, my job here is to cover the sport. I'm also a fan too, but really what I want is I want to know who the best is. And I want to make sure that that question can be answered correctly, because are we going to get 100% Jamahal Hill? I don't know. We interviewed Brian Butler about a month ago, right, George? And he said he was expecting International Fight Week. That was kind of the target date for Jamahal Hill to come back. This is a very serious injury, right?
Yeah.
Now, we all know probably why he's doing this. Pay-per-view cut, a lot of money, and I get that. But I want a true representation of both these fighters at their best. That's what makes me a fan, okay? Trust me, I love these fights where it's just rock'em sock'em robots. I get that too. But at the end of the day, I want to know who's best, and I want to know that both guys involved in that main event are going to be at 100%. I don't think Jamahal Hill's an idiot, but I do think that sometimes, maybe you feel like a 90% you could still get the job done, and that's okay. I get that, but that could be a dangerous game to play. I mean, look at what Alexander Volkanovski's kind of going through right now, right? I'm sure he might have a few regrets taking that second fight against Islam Makhachev. So I don't know, man. I just want the best two fighters on a night and have them perform and tell us who the best is. And I don't know that we're going to get that here. So I think if it were my decision, I think I would have just said, look, we tried. This is what we got. It's still a phenomenal card, and maybe left a little bit for some of them other cards coming up.
I think goes that DDP Izzy would have been the only one that ticked all the boxes, because if you did
Probably.
Jones and Miocic, they're past their prime. If you did Connor and Chandler at 185, why them? Why Connor? I mean, I hear it all the time when we're talking about Connor. His ship sailed, and this matchup, are they rushing Hill too soon? I don't know. I'd say the announcement was a letdown, but I think the fight is outstanding, and I think as we get closer, we're going to just realize it. But I think it's more about the announcement, right?
Yeah, I think a little bit.
Listen, when Dana said he was going to announce it at the post-fight presser, we were all kind of like preparing for the worst, right? Because it wasn't like going to be a surprise announcement during the broadcast. It was like, hey, I'm going to announce it, at this thing. But then he ended up just doing it on Instagram, which is, please stop doing that. Actually doing it in an official capacity would be better, in my opinion.
It was kind of weird, right? Like, you're already there. Why not just do it 10 minutes before, like, to end the broadcast on pay-per-view or something, or at the press conference? I did think that was a bizarre choice by them.
It does kind of say a lot, though, right? To me, what that
Yes.
says is I don't want the fans to boo, to give a bad reaction. That's what it said to me.
But you also have Joe Rogan there to talk it up, John Anik to talk it up. I don't know. I feel like anytime you can deliver it on a broadcast, it's golden. And for them to do it not at the press conference, but yet on Instagram, it just almost seemed like even he wasn't fired up about it.
It's weird.
Yeah. All right. In the chat, I'll answer this because he was with us for many years, but John Morgan is no longer with MMA Junkie, so that's why he's not hosting. He did an excellent job here as the host of Spinning Back Clique, but he has moved on. Still our bud, though. He was there with Mike on press row at UFC 298. Here's one for you, Mike, from Josh Wallace. How do y'all handle Dana's blunt replies to y'all's questions? I think that's a good question. How do you? I mean, has he ever done that to you, or in the last run of questions? What's the feeling there amongst all the reporters?
I mean, I think a lot of people are used to it at this point. You kind of see how Dana rolls, especially like these days. He'll come in and he'll answer the questions a little more sincerely from the people he recognizes. But once it gets like 10, 15 minutes into those 30-minute post-fight scrums, he kind of starts playing with the media a little bit more, firing back, doing some poking. We saw, he had something with Matt Wells not that long ago in Austin, I believe. So It just depends, like, kind of on his mood, how he's taking the questions, how they're set up. He has this thing now where he kind of likes to pick one word that's said within a question and really like tug on that string and use it to either like manipulate your question to him or his answer. But I mean, Dana's Dana at this point. Like, he's going to go out there, and you saw the exchange he had with our editor, Simon Simano, in regard to Conor McGregor at that press conference. And he's going to answer the questions the way he wants to, really, no matter how you frame them or however it may be, however you want to rebuff them or ask follow-ups and stuff. So it can be tricky. I mean, people like to criticize, but when you're sitting in that room, there's a lot of people in there. You know, Dana's looking you right in the eye and, you know, has that demeanor that he has sometimes. It's always not as easy as it looks, but I think, you know, people do the best job they can. So it's not always perfect. We can always do better and try to pry more out of him. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it.
Yeah, you guys should check out Greg Popovich and the way he dismisses questions, the coach with the San Antonio Spurs. Dana still got a way to go to get to that guy. Mo Beck in the chat says, main and co-main for 300 are pretty underwhelming, sort of weird. Will be great, fun card, but lacking the stakes and drama we were all hoping for. I think that's pretty finely worded there. It's a little underwhelming because of what we were expecting, but it doesn't mean the fights are going to suck. Anthony Walker says they definitely put that one together in the Honda Center bathroom before the main card started, signed the contract against the stall door. That's kind of the feeling, yes, of how we took it. Mo Fresh says, I'd like transparency. Someone please explain why Bilal isn't getting his title shot. It's not a topic here, but I think it's valid, guys, because it was tied into a possible 300. I'll go back to you, Mike Bond. Did you hear anything about this and why that? I thought that was, in other words, plan D, E, or F. Like, if we can't do anything, fine, we'll give him Leon and Bilal. But even that didn't happen, and there's even rumors that Bilal might not have been one of the three who would have been considered. Yeah,
I think Leon versus Bilal was like plan Z. Like, that was like literally the last resort, the last possible option for them. They know that the fans didn't want that fight. I mean, Bilal Muhammad is a deserving contender. He deserves a shot, but you couldn't put him in the main event of UFC 300. The backlash would have been absurd. The fans would have been very pissed off. So they ultimately chose to pull the plug on that. You know, you can say that's right or wrong, but it is what it is. Bilal Muhammad is very polarizing, and that's why they went to seemingly Khamzat Chimaev, maybe Shavkat. Like, I don't know exactly who all three of those options were. The way Dana said it at first, where he's like, we offered him the first one, which I felt like was Bilal, but maybe for like a co-main event. And he said yes, and they were like, it didn't really work for us. But then I believe the Schmo reported that Bilal wasn't one of the three considered at all. So I don't really know exactly what direction they went to. I feel bad for the guy, but I do think now that this has seemingly kind of passed, we probably get him on UFC 302, UFC 303, whatever this rumored event is in the UK over the summer. I think we do get Bilal versus Leon probably as the co-main for that card, and Tom Aspinall defending his interim title in the main event. So it's going to work out fine in the end. It's just, yeah, like this, that was never truly an option for this card, in my opinion, unless it would have been like the second or third title fight on the card. Then it would have been a little more palatable for the fans.